Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi, and today we have another Series 10 team report with another top player. We have Yuki. Yuki, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm Yuki. I'm doing pretty good. Today we're talking about the team I got second with at the Victory Road World Cup Open, and yeah, I'm pretty excited to get into this.
Yeah, and I guess for those who haven't heard of you, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm a bit of an odd character because I've been following VGC since 2013, but I I've I only started playing like at the end of May, like in actual VGC events. My most notable thing is I won the third Hatterene series. Um, and yeah, ever since then I've been playing in a lot of VGC tournaments, and you might see my name around sometimes.
You started playing in May of 2021.
Yes. Okay. Well. Okay. I started playing in VGC tournaments.
Okay.
I played one in 2013. I mean VGC specifically.
hmm
But I've been following Pokemon itself since 2003.
Yeah, I mean, still like starting like 4 months ago playing in tournaments and already having two really big finishes is very impressive. That's an absolutely insane rise, and yeah, I mean that's crazy. It took me so long to get my first top, and you got two right off the bat. That's crazy. Um,
Ironically, the first one in 2013 I also topped, so I guess VGC works well for me.
yeah, you're just a natural. And so I guess jump and so this of course you said you got second place in the Victory Road World Cup Open. There were 405 players. It was a massive tournament. And I think that you had one of the coolest teams in the tournament because you're using this Shadow Rider team. Do you want to talk me through your team building process?
Yes. Okay. So the way this came to be was this is the first format I've really played without Dynamax, outside of that one like 8 years ago.
hmm
So this is very new to me. So I was testing every restricted. I was testing Groudon, Kyogre, Xerneas, a little bit of Zacian, and like I couldn't find anything that I like. But one thing I noticed is that Calyrex Shadow Rider is broken, like really broken. Um, it's like a ghost Mewtwo on steroids that just has a spread move for no reason, 120 base power, and it keeps getting boosts. So it's like insane. And I noticed it's really hard to play against it if your opponent's using it. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to use this restricted because I feel like it gives me the highest win chance. Like even if I don't know what I'm doing yet, like you just click Astral Barrage and win if you get in the right situation. So that's why I chose this restricted. As far as the build of the team goes, a lot of Calyrex Shadow Rider teams you'll notice are very heavy offense. They go like Whimsicott, Mienshao, Lele, and like with expanding force, Calyrex often in that case. So they're very like super frail teams with they just try to hammer you down immediately. I don't like that type of play for myself. Like I don't mind if anyone else does it, but like I don't play well with that kind of style of team. So I figured, what if I just take a team that works well without a restricted, like it can do well without it, and then just put Calyrex in the back on top of that. And I really noticed that the core of Rillaboom, Incineroar, and Bulky Urshifu is absurd. Like it is I don't even know how to put it. It's just like the positioning game is insane, and it like you can win against, for example, like a Zacian team. You can often win against just with those three. You don't even need Calyrex, which already has a good matchup against Zacian. So that was kind of those four were my core of the team that I made here.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard, I've thought this, and I've been told this that Rillaboom, Urshifu, and Incineroar is just the single best Firewater Grass core that I think we've ever had in Pokemon. They've just got so many tools individually, and then you put them together, and I mean, there's a reason that we see it on basically every team. And of course, Calyrex Shadow is maybe the one archetype where it hasn't really been present. And I guess it makes a lot of sense, right? Because you're just winning damage traits very consistently. And if you get like a little bit ahead in damage, Calyrex Shadow takes 1 KO, and then it's just impossible to come back.
Exactly. That's exactly why I wanted this core, because it's really, like you said, it's really good at like you take. I think of it like a resource. Like you take, like, let's say 20% off of their mon, and you don't lose much in return. Let's say. So what's really important is like certain Pokemon, like, you think of, oh, Incineroar, it can one shot Calyrex. It doesn't take much damage from it. They have an Incineroar, you can't do anything. But what if Incineroar is at 20% and you click Astral Barrage and it just dies, and it can't be faked out? You can't fake out Calyrex. So that's kind of the way I play this team, is like I look at my opponent's team and I look at what resources I need to take away. Like, for example, Incineroar leaving a Barrage, Rillaboom leaving a Barrage, or whatever, to win with Calyrex or something else. Even it doesn't have to be Calyrex. I actually, in the first 2 matches of this tournament, I didn't bring Calyrex at all, and I won anyway. So that's kind of the playstyle here.
Mm-hmm. And then the last Pokemon on the team is Nihilego. Why did you add that to the team?
So both Nihilego and Whimsicott are kind of weird picks here, because I didn't know what else to choose. Nihilego is mainly because it helps with Xerneas, for the Xerneas matchup, because that's not a very good matchup. And so I brought Nihilego. Well, Whimsicott is for the Calyrex and Kyogre matchup. So, and you can do things like bring Nihilego, Whimsicott against Xerneas. It also helps against Yveltal if you run into that.
Yeah, my experience testing Calyrex Shadow on the ladder was that whenever you start using this Pokemon, you run into a lot of Yveltal.
Yeah, but my first round was Yveltal, and that's something that I really like about building a team that's not too focused on Calyrex, where, like, maybe they take a cheap shot and get rid of it, and you can't win anymore because you're running kind of weird Pokemon. But everything else is pretty strong, so you can just focus on just playing good stuff and maybe still take out a win.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, but Nihilego is also really good against the standard core of Incineroar and Rillaboom, which is on like almost every team. So it's really nice to have something that threatens something so common in the support mons.
We saw Nihilego on Rajan's team. We've seen like Naganadel, the top cut this past tournament, and you beat them, of course. And we've seen like Eternatus a bunch, and all these poison types just happen to do really well into this really common Firewater Grass core. And so, yeah, Nihilego, definitely a Pokemon that's been picking up in usage. And so I guess, do you want to talk me through your Pokemon's movesets and EV spreads, and why you chose to build them the way that you did?
Okay, I'll talk about the most notable things when it comes to the EV spreads first. So you might see the Whimsicott spread looks kind of strange. It's max speed, of course, but the rest, this Whimsicott, I really didn't want to run Focus Sash, because I thought Mental Herb was better for mirror matches, and I never felt like I needed Focus Sash, because with this spread, at least, the only time I die, like, is in a double up. So it survives like a timid Ice Beam from Kyogre. It survives Life Orb Astro Barrage from Calyrex. It survives. Apparently, it even has a roll to survive +2 Dazzling Gleam from Xerneas, which happened in the tournament. I did not have a for that. But it survives a Water Spout as well. So it can take most important hits and still be there. and I looked at the special attack, but the thing is, people run like the main thing is you want Moonblast to hit Urshifu really well. But I calced, and you see the bulky Urshifus, they kind of always survive it anyway, even if you're max special attack. So I felt like you didn't need that. Um, the Calyrex is odd because it's not max because with 4 HP for special defense, you always survive a +2 modest Dazzling Gleam from Xerneas. At the end of the day, I don't think that's actually very important because it's still a 6% roll without it, but you definitely want 4 HP to get an extra point of Grassy Terrain recovery, which Whimsicott's HP stat is also EV to get that extra point. Urshifu is the same way. It has just enough to get the most recovery it can get, while its speed stat I changed from the variant I stole here. It's EV to outspeed Regikitty in Tailwind, because I have Tailwind on this team. But of course, you might not need that if you're not running Tailwind alongside it. The Rillaboom, it survives a +1 Behemoth Blade from max HP, and it doesn't get 2 KO'd by Ice Beam from Kyogre. Okay, so Incineroar, as you can see, is focused on the physical defense in this variant. I figured that was more important because of Zacian. I really wanted to live, this way you can live either a Intimidated Close Combat or a +1 Sacred Sword always. And this also only has a 6% roll to be one-shot by Mienshau's Close Combat, which is less relevant, but I figured that was more important for the Zacian matchup, and I really liked it. There was actually sometimes I played against like 2 or 3 Groudons this tournament, and there was a time when they went for a neutral Precipice Blades. I had like 156 HP or something. I lived with 1 HP and Flare Blitz their Venusaur on the switch in the same turn. So yeah, the only downside I think to this is that you get 2 KO'd by Lecky through the Citrus Berry with just a unboosted Thunderbolt. So that's one of the trade-offs here. And Neolego is just EV to survive. It survives Grassy Glide from Rillaboom, and it also survives Close Combat from Mienshao. It's a very convenient spread because it has the same special attack and speed stat, but it still gets a special attack boost. So it's the most you can put into defense without losing that.
Yeah. And so I guess I've noticed that a lot of your EV spreads, rather than being like mixed bulk, are very focused one way or the other. So, for example, I've seen Urshifu that are EV to also live an attack from like Assault Vest Rillaboom, or Incineroars are a lot of times EV to live attacks from Xerneas. So, I guess, why did you choose these EV spreads over something, I guess, with the opposite bulk?
Okay, yeah. So the way I choose my EV spreads is I make like text files and I copy and paste a bunch of damage calcs that I think are important. So then I see all the different milestones, like you need this much defense to live that hit or whatever. And then I just pick and choose, depending on the team, which things are most important to me. So on this team, for example, with the Incineroar, I felt like it living the +2 Xerneas Moonblast wasn't as important because it doesn't have Snarl, it doesn't have Roar, so I feel like it's not doing too much in return. I could Parting Shot, but I'm also not running Goggles, so you know, I just didn't feel like it was as important as the physical defense. I'm not. You could use it a different way. I will actually recommend. You only need 236 HP for the Citrus Berry recovery, so you can change the spreads around a little bit. The Urshifu, on the Urshifu, I actually think you can take bulk out of the special defense. I would probably recommend calculating for those Vodaboom rolls. I didn't have them on my mind when I was making this, to be honest.
Hmm.
Were those the two mons you asked about, or did I forget
Yeah,
something?
yeah. I think that the a lot of the other ones are pretty straightforward, and or at least like I don't like. It makes sense that the Whimsicott is bulky when it doesn't have a focus sash. Although I guess that is a good question. So you don't have a focus sash on the team. Um, would you? Why didn't you choose to put a focus sash on either the Whimsicott or the Shifu?
Okay, so as far as the Whimsicott goes, I specifically didn't want to focus Sash because of the matchup between opposing Whimsicott and, Tornadus as well, because I didn't want to get taunted. Um, because as you can see here, I'm running Tailwind and Cotton Spore. It's to give me a little bit of an edge in, when my opponent has Tailwind and I have Tailwind, isn't it kind of evens out too much. So if I can go Cotton Spore as well, I get that extra speed control, which I felt was really valuable. Um, so I wanted to get rid of mind games where they like taunt me or something. And on the Urshifu, I liked bulky Urshifu more than Focus Sash because it's also a mon you can switch in. With the sash, you don't want to switch in because it gets broken. But if it's bulky, like you switch in, you take, nothing from the hit that you can switch into, like Snarl or Surging Strikes or whatever, and you heal up with the Grassy Terrain recovery. I didn't feel the need for a focus sash pretty much.
Hmm. Yeah, I was talking to Sohaib in his team report, and he said something really similar. He didn't have a focus sash on the team, but still went with the bulky Urshifu. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess that's just the trend nowadays, and it makes a lot of sense. And so you mentioned Cotton Spore and Whimsicott. I thought that was a really cool tech. And the other three moves are pretty standard. But did you ever miss having like Protect or Helping Hand or one of the other coverage moves? Not coverage moves, but like support moves that Whimsicott can have.
Yes, it was tough because I was deciding the move set, and the first three moves were set. Um, to be honest, I didn't have a very clear game plan for like the mirror match or Kyogre. You kind of just win pretty easily. But like, so I just went with Cotton Spore because like if I can't think of anything better, I might as well go with something that sometimes works, right?
Hmm.
So not being able to have Helping Hand or Protect though, it diminishes a lot of things you can do with Whimsicott, and especially Protect with positioning. But the problem for me was I struggled against Xerneas in testing, so I really wanted the taunt. The taunt is actually just for Xerneas on it, pretty much, so I can stop the Geomancy because you can't Rage Powder it away from Whimsicott. So I felt like I had no choice in a way in giving up a move for those two. But I think they're very important options if you can fit them on there.
Yeah, definitely. Whimsicott just has so many good moves, but I mean, and Tailwind and Moonblast are kind of mandatory, but Cotton Spore and Taunt both have a lot of utility, and Cotton Spore especially is something we haven't really seen before, or at least not very often. But I think is a very cool choice that I think I can see working really well, especially in those scenarios that you talked about where your opponent also sets up Tailwind.
Yeah, but I will mention that the Cotton Spore, okay, it's an option I saw in like Series 8, but using it now, that I got the idea not from, that wasn't really my idea. I got the idea from seeing a different Calyrex team. I think it won the Rose Tower Clash, the fifth one, I think.
Mhm. And then moving on to the Calyrex itself. So Calyrex, of course, you have to run Astro Barrage, you have to run Protect. Tell me about why you chose Substitute and Shadow Ball as its other two moves.
Okay, so on the Calyrex, I first off, I'll mention because we did mention Focus Sash earlier. I thought about Focus Sash Calyrex, like for the mirror match, for example, but I didn't like it because you lose a lot of damage output, so I felt it made every other matchup ever worse. So I definitely think Life Orb, or you can run Specs too. I've seen that. Um, is what I would recommend for sure. So as far as the moves go, Substitute, um, it proved it's kind of similar to the idea of Substitute on Zacian. The Calyrex, if it's on the field, it puts on so much pressure. Um, so knowing that you have Substitute puts on even more pressure on your opponent because like it really limits what moves they can do that are actually good if they have to play defensively against it, because you can't just like protect and switch out and then I get a sub up and it gets really bad. So it just it's really good for those situations where like I don't I don't want to have to call a lot of like 50-50s, like, or are they going to protect or not, or I can just sometimes you can just substitute and it's 100% safe. The worst case they do is like, you're fine. So I really like that for the flexibility it gives you. The Shadow Ball is I really wanted a single target move because of White Guard, and I didn't feel like running a Psychic type move because I was mainly thinking about this from the perspective of like they have Mian Shao Calyrex, and then you Shadow Ball into it, the Calyrex. Um, but I think Psyshock is really strong, and if I had run it, I probably would have won. So missing that was a really big issue in the finals because of Amoongus.
Mhm.
So I think it's between Shadow Ball and Psyshock. Uh, they're both really important. You definitely want one single target move. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Uh, that makes a lot of sense. I think that in Notion, his team report was talking about substitute and how like just by getting off a substitute, you just checkmate your opponent. A lot of times, it just locks up games that otherwise might have some volatility in end games. And like you said, it really punishes your opponent for trying to play passively around Calyrex.
yes, exactly. That's exactly why I'm running it. Just phrased way better than I did.
Hmm. And then, so I guess the Urshifu set is pretty standard. The Nihiligo set is pretty standard. Can you tell me about why you chose knockoff on Rillaboom over maybe something else?
The main reason I ran knockoff instead of, I think the other option would be Woodhammer. I heard
Hmm.
you could try a high horsepower if you really don't like Stack Attacka, but it doesn't sound too great. So, um, I mainly ran it because I really don't like Porygon 2. And from playing Series 9, one of my win conditions was you knock off the Eviolite, and then Urshifu hits it really hard with close combat. So the main thing I was worried about is Porygon 2 because it can't take any damage from Calyrex on this team. I would say it has a lot less utility than it did in Series 9 because you could knock off weakness policies and all that stuff back then. And like Dusclops was maybe more common. So it's between knockoff and Woodhammer pretty much. I didn't
Right.
care too much about the Kyogre matchup, so I didn't feel like I needed Woodhammer.
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess one other interesting tech that we've seen recently against the another top four player in this tournament was running drum beating as their grass move of choice. So I guess that's the other choice in that slot. But yeah, I guess if Grassy Glide is doing enough, and in this type of team, I can definitely see it being enough on Rillaboom. Then knockoff just has a lot of utility. I know again, Inosh is the other Calyrex player that I've spoken to extensively, and he said that he just lost to Porygon 2 automatically in one of his games. And so having ways to beat that is really valuable for sure. And
Yeah.
then last but not least, of course, is the Incineroar. And so I guess you're running a Citrus Berry. That's something that we've seen like safety goggles. We've seen a couple other items on Incineroar. And then you aren't running a dark coverage move on it. You're opting for Taunt instead. Can you talk me through why you made those choices?
Okay, so I'm running Citrus Berry because I'm used to it. It's the main item I've run on Incineroar for like the entire time I've used it. So I felt I'd have a better chance with the comfort of being used to that recovery it gives me.
Mhm.
And I wasn't running a dark type move because I was really afraid of Trick Room in this tournament. So I wanted the taunt option because, having Little Boom and Incineroar gives you a lot of ways to stop the Trick Room from going up. So that's why I chose taunt here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like, what are you hitting with the dark move? Well, you're mostly hitting Calyrex. And it seems like to me the way you're winning against opposing Calyrex is just by beating them with your own Calyrex, right? And having speed control over them. Or just hitting them with a knockoff. I guess you just have another dark move on the team.
Yeah, I'll actually comment on that. I've noticed in playing that, Rillaboom gets knockoff, and Incineroar gets, all the dark type moves that they can both one shot Calyrex, but if you're playing against Calyrex with them, you never do. Like it kind of never happens. So I also felt like they because your opponent always covers for them. Like you're not gonna play against a Calyrex player at 6-0 that doesn't know how to cover for Rillaboom or Incineroar because it's the most common thing ever.
Hmm.
So I just felt like it wasn't too useful to target that. I think Snarl on Incineroar can be it has a lot of really good uses. Um, I like I would recommend that one more than just like Throat Chop or whatever because it also goes through the substitutes, so Calyrex can't. It's less safe to try to sub in front of you.
Yeah, I definitely like Snarl and Cinnamore too, just because like you don't often want to take. A lot of times you don't want to take a KO with Incineroar. You want the Incineroar to be in the back when you take a KOs, or you want to be able to switch it in and immediately have fake out pressure. Whereas Snarl just really punishes your opponent for switching anything in. If they are running something like Calyrex, something like Kyogre. So I definitely see where you're coming from. Although Taunt seemed to work really well and covers for a lot of the like harder Trick Room teams that aren't really that common, but are starting to see some play.
I will actually admit I don't think Taunt worked too well because I did play against some Trick Room teams actually, but they were all like hard Trick Room with like free Trick Room users. So you just can't keep up. Like you can't always taunt them. So I actually think the better approach is to just let it go up and then play through it because it's a lot easier without Dynamax because you can fake out and everything and then just get into a position where as it ends you can just like blow them up with Calyrex or something. So
Mhm.
the main thing I would really see Taunt doing is like taunting Amoonguss at best because I don't think it worked very well against Trickroom.
Right. Sure. And so I guess if you were to make any changes to the team having played this tournament, what, if any, changes would you make?
I would definitely recommend just going max on Calyrex because I went through a few damage calcs and I didn't see a difference in that 1 point special attack, but I've gone through some more and I see a difference now. So it's a 6% roll, the Dazzling Gleam, and they have to be modest anyway. So I would definitely change that. The Urshifu, you can definitely play a lot more with the EV spread. Um, I would say like you can maybe give it more attack to be able to 2 KO Zacian with surging strikes if they're more bulky. Have a better roll for that. Um, or take 2 Sacred Swords better, or live a Wood Hammer, stuff like that. So because I didn't feel you needed this much special defense. I didn't think it was very important. Um, I would mostly mostly it's moves and small EV changes like that. So like probably pick a dark move on Incineroar instead. Consider Wood Hammer. Aqua Jet is weird on Urshifu because like you sometimes really want it, sometimes it helps. Actually, like I won one game by like switching it into a +2 Xerneas and then Aqua Jetting after. So like sometimes it really helps, but it gets a lot of other good moves like helping hand. U-turn sounds a bit awkward with it being so fast, but I would experiment with that slot, and experiment with the Whimsicott moveset a little more. Nihilego was like, that's like probably the most perfect mon on the team. You don't really have to change anything about the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely good things to consider. And, we are still very early in the metagame, so there's going to be changes to be made as we see different things come into the fray. And I guess, but knowing what we know about the metagame, do you want to talk me through how you approach some of the common matchups that you expect to face?
For Zacian, it's mainly like a it's mainly a resource game, as I already mentioned. Usually, you can go a core of like Urshifu, Rilla, Insane, and Kelly Shadow, and you kind of just position around and try to, whittle down whatever's important to whittle down at the moment. And you always have the option of coming in with Calyrex and going for an Astro Barrage that's always faster and can't be faked out. It gets a little more complicated if they have actual speed control, but you can, it's a very flexible approach. And for Xerneas, that's mainly what Nihilego is there for. One thing that's important to know is you can, if you Tailwind with Calyrex and they're already set up, you're still faster and can go for an Astral Barrage. So if the Xerneas took too much damage, it might just drop to that anyway, even at +2, because it does about like 30% still. And Nihilego is really important there. Because it also deals with, they often have supports like Volcarona. For Kyogre, you have different options. I actually, because a lot of Serena are starting to run triple axle, I don't recommend bringing Rillaboom very much, because it often, like, it can't do anything, just gets knocked out, because they cover for it really hard. But the thing is, if you have this Whimsicott, you're always faster, no matter what they do. So you typically always get off a barrage, or Urshifu is really good in the matchup because they set up the rain and you can Surging Strikes for, I think it 2 kills their entire team from the matchups I've seen so far. And Groudon is, Urshifu and Rillaboom are really strong, and you can kind of just, typically it's a slower paced game, so you get into a position to get an Astro Barrage, and you typically just kind of win off that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that seems like a really solid overview of how to play the team. I mean, to some extent, yeah, I guess it's sort of just like, we've seen Urshifu, we've seen Rillaboom, we've seen Incineroar, like those Pokemon, they don't necessarily play themselves, but a lot of the teams that have them play in very similar ways. You just have a different restricted, and in my opinion, maybe the best restricted, because it just immediately puts on pressure. And also, if you take one KO, it feels like the game is over. So, yeah, I guess, do you want to talk me through one or two of the most notable matchups that you played through your tournament run?
Okay, the most notable matchups I played were the mirror match. I played 2 mirror matches, one of which was the only match where I didn't even take a game. Like, the mirror match is really tough because, gonna be honest, this team doesn't have a specific game plan against it, because I couldn't figure one out. So the mirror match is really difficult, and there was, in the finals I played against the Mungus, which was really problematic. This team really doesn't like Amoonguss, which is why, something like Goggles or Psyshock could be really helpful if you wanted to adjust the team there. So those are the main two things I would mention.
Yeah. So we've had team reports from Marcus, your top 8 opponent, and then Inosh, your top 4 opponent. And they, both were very impressed by the team, talked about how difficult a matchup it was for them. Did you have any thoughts about those matchups? Because I love hearing like both sides of a game.
With the Torn Ogre matchup, so with every matchup in this tournament, I saw their sheet, and okay, so for this matchup, the first thing that came to mind when I saw their team is that they didn't have much of a way to cover for the Calyrex matchup. They have Lariat on its inner war, but the thing is, like I said, you just bring it down enough, and it's not a threat anymore. Especially because Urshifu looked really good here. I didn't expect him to bring that Ganadel. So I figured in the first game, I go with the Whimsicott Calyrex, so I can Tailwind and just kind of start picking off damage. And I went for a very hyper offensive approach with Urshifu as well. And just because when we're playing that kind of game, my team is stronger just because my restricted is stronger 1-to-1, like Calyrex versus Kyogre. So like, and then in the second game, I expect them to not try, because they tried just playing like Tornadus. And I expect them to not do that again. So they actually they led with Eleki, which would be a threat on their Tailwind, but this is an example where I went for Tailwind and then I Surging Strikes into Eleki, and there's not much they can do. Like they had Eleki Kyogre. With that approach, like Kyogre can't hit Urshifu, and I always, you can't protect. If you switch out something, either is KO'd or takes half its health. So I just have way too many tools for them to deal with in this matchup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that Marcus said that he really didn't expect you to lead Whimsicott game 2, and that's why he led Eleki. He said that he had to hard call your lead, and I guess he called it wrong. But yeah, it definitely felt like you had the matchup there. He did not have a great way to cleanly deal with your Pokemon. And then do you want to talk about your top 4 match versus Inosh?
Okay, so that was one of the most exciting matches that I had in the tournament. This, whenever I saw, well, I only saw Calyrex twice, but like I look at the team and I'm like, oh my god, okay, so I definitely understand. It wouldn't show EVs like this, but I knew from seeing Psychic Seed that Lele can live in Astro Barrage. That's very telegraphed. So, an Entei is Assault Vest. Nothing on their team aside from Ditto gets one shot by Astro Barrage, and they have a Ditto. I didn't notice it wasn't Scarfed, which surprised me, but so that actually made me think they weren't gonna really bring it. So I just kind of went with Whimsicott Calyrex. I brought Urshifu to the matchup because I really wanted it to get rid of Entei. And I didn't expect them to bring their own Urshifu, which they didn't. So the first game, they lead Whimsicott Entei and I lead Whimsicott Calyrex. And the thing is, I have the speed advantage, right? But I don't one-shot Entei, and it's going to do way too much to my Calyrex. So even though they're slower, they put a lot more pressure out on me. So it was a weird game, but I somehow must have gotten rid of Entei, and then they had their Ditto and Calyrex in the back, which I remember both turned into Calyrex. I must have won the first game through speed control, but in the second game, they actually went with Lele. So they lead Whimsicott Lele, I lead Whimsicott Calyrex, and I know Astro Barrage is not a KO. So I actually go for Protect and Tailwind. This was specifically so I could, on the next turn, Moonblast and then Barrage. But like they double up into my Urshifu, like they completely call my Protect on Calyrex. So then I just get swept by Calyrex in the end because the fact that I protected, they have Encore, so I can't stay in even. But in the last game, we both lead the same thing, and I expect them to it was basically kind of a 50-50. Like I expect them to do the same to this time, just cover for me doing something else. So I actually make the same play again, and this time it works. Right, okay, my game plan in the other one, it was so I could Moonblast and Astral Barrage after setting up the Tailwind and protecting, because their Psychic Terrain protects me from Encore. But so in this game it works out because they actually Shadow Ball into my Protect. And then I just I get to like snowball from there. So it's just a very weird matchup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that Calyrex mirrors are always going to be volatile, and this one seemed like it was especially volatile. But yeah, just very intense, and you faced a bunch of great players on your run. So it's again, like, congratulations. Second place in 405 players is absolutely incredible. And yeah, so thank you so much for coming on and sharing your team. I think this is a really cool team. I love this approach to Calyrex Shadow Rider. It just is very different from how we've seen other teams approach this, and I think it might be just the way to run it. So yeah, again, thank you again for coming on. Do you have any final words or shout outs that you wanted to give?
Yes, and I wanted to say, I really want to thank you for the opportunity to have me on your channel. I've been really nervous, but I'm really excited to talk about this team because I really like this approach to using Calyrex. And I wanted to give a shout out to Sohei because I got the idea of using that core of Urshifu, Robum, and Incineroar from watching him play with Zacian, because I just see him play against a Zacian and Urshifu just takes it apart and it can't do anything, and it's just impressive. And I also wanted to give a shout out to the Snowbell Powder Snows, which have been really nice to me over these past weeks, and I really appreciate the help with testing and everything I get there. And the last thing I wanted to mention is I really enjoyed the matches I had in this tournament. I think a lot of them were very good and exciting. So I record every match I have, by the way, in a tournament. So I just wanted to mention I was considering uploading them onto YouTube.
Awesome. Yeah. Again, so I will, if you send me the link, I will link it in the description. And of course, I will also have your socials in the description, so you can follow Yuki on Twitter to get the latest update for when these get uploaded. And yeah, so thank you again for coming on, and again, congratulations! Really, really impressive performance. And until next time, I will see you all later.